So the authors were able to demonstrate that overall vaccinated individuals were able to produce antibodies to nucleocapsid protein post-infection about 40% of the time, as opposed to more than 90% of unvaccinated were able to produce antibodies to that specific protein. And the reason why the authors suspected this might have to do with vaccine and its influence is the fact that even when the viral loads were compared to be the same between whether you were vaccinated or unvaccinated when you were infected, the response was still different. So for that one specific viral load that they were looking at, approximately 15% of vaccinated were able to produce antibodies to the nucleocapsid protein in comparison to about 70% of unvaccinated. So there's a definitely vaccine-specific response that determines how the vaccinated person will then respond with their immune system to natural infection afterwards. But this goes much further for the vaccinated people as well. And we wanted to talk about that, this process of imprinting, specifically in a vaccinated community, because very interesting work came out from both Sweden and UK showing how healthcare workers who were triple vaccinated were responding to Omicron infection. And they had a different, so first, in both studies, what was shown is that Omicron infection resulted in reduction of immune response than in comparison to the past variants. So that's already key observation right there. So for whatever reason, the vaccinated people were not responding to the same degree to this particular variant in terms of their capacity to produce either the antibodies or T cells as compared to other variants. But also what was shown is that depending on their infection history, they had different responses. So vaccinated people who never had any infection had a much better response than those who actually had an infection before. So with the Swedish study, if the individuals were infected prior to vaccination and then they were reinfected by the Omicron, their response was much more reduced. So that means your infection followed by vaccination had an impact on how these individuals were able to respond subsequently. That's actually important because this means we potentially might have inadvertently been ignoring natural immunity in favor of vaccination, when we are now learning that such natural immunity might have been better to be left intact because of this unusual effect that now vaccinated people who had been infected with the original variant that started the pandemic as well, they have a very poor response post-Omicron infection. This was also seen in the UK study as well. And in this, once again, in this case, it was shown that depending on the variant that the healthcare workers were infected with before being reinfected with the Omicron, if it was what they all had reduced levels of response, Alpha was better than the wild type version, and the wild type version, meaning the variant that actually started the pandemic, in those triple vaccinated individuals pretty much almost completely nullified their ability to mount immune response, which might explain why so many vaccinated individuals are now being reinfected, and that might actually be because of the imprinting of previous infection by a specific type of variant. So also I can tell you that in the UK study, I believe it was also shown that some of the triple vaccinated individuals were not even able to mount any T cell response, but overall all of these people post-Omicron infection showed reduced response to the spike protein T cell production as well. So basically what we're learning right now, that this imprinting, because of the prior infection with the variant, can have a long-lasting effect and potentially detrimental effect in how the individual can then respond.